That is the official town hall bell. That's what we use to start all town halls, whether it's the official 3.5-day statewide town hall or our town halls that precede that, where we get information and ideas from other people, including yourselves. So my name is Tara Jackson. I'm president of the Arizona Town Hall. I've been in this role for about 10 years. And before that, I practiced law, so I have a long interest in law and policy. And I think most of you that are attending this event, whether you're here in Mesa or at one of the many locations around the state, attending it live, and for some groups, we are recording this and they will be participating and attending either next week or the week after that. The Future Leaders Town Hall has been going on for 5 years now, and we have found that it is an amazing way not only to engage and hear the voice of our student members of Arizona, but also to get some incredible ideas. So some of you may be participating in this event because you were required to by a teacher, or maybe you're interested in policy. And hopefully you have a great event just today and a great discussion. But what I want you to know is that for us, your perspective and what happens today is far more important than just what happens today. If you were to go on our website, or if you're here in Mesa and you pick up one of our reports from a past town hall, you will see that at the conclusion of every 3.5-day town hall, which is a statewide event, we publish various reports, and in those reports we include the key points that come out of these very important discussions of Arizona's future leaders. And by the way, when we say future leaders, we know that most of you are already leaders. In fact, we hope that all of you are leaders, whether it's leading by example, whether it's taking a leadership role in your family, your school, or anywhere else. This is simply the name that we give to this event for our high school and college students. Now, a lot of you may not be familiar with the Arizona Town Hall, so just a quick sort of 5 or 10 second overview of who we are. We are a nonprofit, and some call us nonpartisan. I think it's better to call us multi-partisan. Our role and mission is to involve as many diverse perspectives as possible in a topic, to bring all those perspectives together. Every voice is equal and has something important to add. Whether you are from rural Arizona, whether you are a CEO, a student, a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, a member of a tribe, our job and our mission is to bring everyone together using facts and information on critical policy issues and figuring out what is the best answer, how we can move forward together as a state. We have been doing this for well over 50 years, so a long time. And we hope to be doing it for well over 50 more years. And part of what we are doing in the future is we believe it's even more important to get the voice of more Arizonans involved in policy discussions. That's why we started the Future Leaders Town Hall. We think your voice is incredibly important. We will not only listen very carefully to what you say, whether you're here in Mesa or you're at one of the many other locations around the state. Your results from today will be compiled and summarized. We will take the key points, present them to leaders not only at the statewide town hall, but in programs that happen for years after this year. So I just want you to know, I hope that you take this very seriously today. We really want to hear from you. We really want you to be involved. And this is one of those times where I'm not going to tell you, let me just put your head, I'm not going to tell you to put your phones down unless you're not talking about the town hall or this issue. So we would love for you to tweet, post on Facebook, take pictures if your fellow participants are okay with that, and talk about these issues that you learned today. Talk about the ideas, spread the ideas. So feel free to do that throughout your participation here today. So that's kind of an overview of what this is about and why. What we will do for the next time, or for the next few minutes while we're live streaming, is you will first hear from, in my mind, a real expert on this topic. And then you will hear from one of our partners here with Maricopa Community Colleges about what the process will be, how we will go about having this discussion. So before every statewide town hall, we create a research document, a background document, which we do our very best to make as objective and factual as possible. It's very challenging, and whoever is in charge of it has quite a task to take on, because there are a lot of people with different opinions who criticize every word that's written. And the person who took on the task of writing our background report for this next town hall did an amazing job of putting together a resource document that you can find on our website, everything you need to know about financing in Arizona. Truly a remarkable background document. What we have done for you today is try to put what we thought would be the key points on just 2 pages. Very hard to do. And then to give this person I'm talking about just 10 minutes, very hard to do. To provide you with a little bit of an overview of some of the most important issues around this topic so that you can have as informed a discussion as possible. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the person who took on this job of creating a background report for the statewide town hall. He has a very long title because most academics do. Tom Rex is Associate Director of the Center for Competitiveness and Prosperity Research at the W.P. Carey School of Business for ASU, but mostly he is, in my mind, Arizona's best expert on all of these topics and issues. So please join me in welcoming Tom Rex.
Thank you, Sarah. So the topic title is Financing Arizona's Future. And really what we're talking about is public finance. Public finance is really just revenues and expenditures made by governments. Excuse me. If you want to pull out your key facts page, we're going to look at the first few of those because that gives you a fairly quick background on just what public finance or government finance really is. And we're talking here, well, we're talking specifically in Arizona. You have to talk about the federal government as well, because more than a third of the revenue that the state government gets comes from the federal government. Similarly, local governments, we're talking about cities and counties and school districts and special districts, they get over a third of their money from the state government. So there's a lot of interrelationships between the different layers of government. The real focus here is state government, though, particularly the general fund. That's the largest of the funds that the state government has. It's the fund that supports education, K-12 education, universities, and a little bit of funding to the community colleges. It's also the fund that the state legislature has the most control over, because it's a fund that most funds that the state uses, the money comes from one particular revenue source and goes for a very specific purpose. The general fund instead has a lot of different sources of revenue, but primarily just two, and a lot of different uses of that money. So money for education, for example, is basically competing with money for corrections and a whole host of other state programs. Now the reason why we're talking about this topic, and by the way, this is the 5th time in the last 25 years that the town hall has selected this topic to discuss, is because of issues with the state government general fund. In particular, running frequent deficits. And unlike the federal government that can run a deficit, state and local governments cannot run a deficit. They have to balance. So when you run a deficit, then at the state or local level, you've got yourself a real problem. You've got to solve them by the next fiscal year anyway. State governments had a host of deficits over the years. Really, all governments have a problem with what's called cyclical deficits. They come about when they go along with the economic cycle, so that when the economy's strong, a lot of revenue comes into government, they actually run a cyclical surplus for a few years. Then when the economic cycle goes the other direction and you go into a recession, revenues to governments just drop off. And you go, in many cases, very quickly from a sizable cyclical surplus to a sizable cyclical deficit. So that really is at the heart of the issue. And it's made worse by the fact that the demands on government are not pro-cyclical. When I say pro-cyclical, I mean it goes up and down with the economic cycle. Most state government, local government functions are not cyclical at all. Some of them are actually counter-cyclical. When the economy is bad, the person loses their job, they qualify for public assistance. So the demands on state government are even greater at that time. So it's this imbalance that you have between revenues going one direction while demands on government go the other direction that really makes it a difficult issue. So historically, state government tended to fix its cyclical deficits by adjusting the state property tax rate. The property tax is levied by a whole host of local governments, and it used to be levied by the state government, and particularly for this revenue smoothing effect. However, the legislature eliminated the state portion of the property tax almost 20 years ago, so that tool is no longer available. What they did do instead is create what's called a rainy day fund. Basically, it's a savings account. The idea is when revenues are strong and you have a surplus, you don't spend the money, you don't give it back to the taxpayer, you instead basically put it in a savings account. And when you draw that money out, when the economic cycle has shifted and you're on a deficit. So we do have a rainy day fund. The idea is great, but the execution has left basically there isn't nearly enough money to put into the rainy day fund. So when the next recession comes and the next deficit hits, it's far insufficient to handle the needs. When that's the case, again, they have to balance the budget. It can't be like the federal government, just add to the deficit. So they have three options. You can increase revenues, you can cut spending, or you can do some one-time measures which are called budget solutions. Now, the problem with either increasing revenues or cutting spending during a recession is that temporarily it's a negative effect on the economy. You're already in a recession. You really don't want to make things worse. These budget tools, budget solutions, have various limitations and various negative effects. You don't want to overuse those either. So it ends up then being a very challenging situation. And the state legislature, given the severity of this last recession, had a very challenging set of conditions many years in a row, starting in fiscal year 2008, running at least through 2012, and it hasn't gotten a whole lot better since then. So there's another problem, though, with the state general fund. This one's more unique to that fund, where it's a cyclical deficit issue that affects all governments everywhere. The other issue is one of what's called a structural deficit. So that's independent from the ups and downs in the economic cycle. There's an imbalance between revenues and expenditures. It can be caused either by cutting taxes and not at the same time cutting spending to the same extent, or just the opposite, increasing spending without identifying a revenue source. Arizona's had a structural deficit for most of the last 40 years, most of it due to tax cuts, particularly in the last 25 years. So that's introduced the structural deficit. The way that this can come about is they pass the tax cuts when there's a cyclical surplus. So you can cut revenues, and for that fiscal year at least, you don't run a deficit. So everything's fine, briefly. What happens, though, is then when the economy changes the other direction, not only does the cyclical surplus go to a cyclical deficit, you pile on top of it the structural deficit, and then you've got an immense growth. And to give you an idea of the magnitude here, in the last 25 years, the tax cuts passed by the legislature have reduced revenue to the general fund by $4 billion. That's about 30%. So it gives you an idea of the magnitude of the issue. Now, spending cuts have occurred in order to balance the budget, but they tend to come after the tax cuts. They come during the recession, and again, the worst possible time that you want to be doing something like that is when they've had to do it in order to balance the budget. So, again, there's been a 25-year history of tax cuts that have reduced revenue in the general fund, but that's not been the only effect of the tax cuts. They've narrowed the tax base. The general fund now is primarily dependent on just two revenue sources, the sales tax and the income tax. And guess what? Both of those are the two most cyclical taxes. So by narrowing the tax base, they made the problem with the cyclical deficits even worse. The other issue is by becoming more reliant on the sales tax. The sales tax in Arizona is limited to only goods and not all goods, while consumer spending is shifting to goods purchased over the internet, not all of which are taxed, and to services which are not taxed. So the revenue from the sales tax doesn't keep up with the growth of the state, and that then introduces its own structural deficit gradually over time. Now, your first discussion question is going to relate to the guiding principles. And if you take a look at the box on the bottom of the first page of the key facts, you see the various guiding principles there. There's 10 of them listed that apply to the revenue system particularly, and then there's one more that's broader that looks at both revenues and expenditures together. That one's called accountability. And basically, it simply is saying that if you make a change on one side, you've got to make a commensurate change on the other. So if you reduce revenue, you've got to reduce expenditures. If you increase expenditures, you've got to increase revenue. Very simple in concept, but it hasn't been followed for the last 25 years. So, if you look through that list of guiding principles in the revenue system, I'll point out some that tie in with what I've been talking about. Stability. Well, that's what we've been talking about. We've got a real problem with instability from year to year in the revenue stream. Responsiveness. We've got a problem with that, again, because the sales tax is becoming more and more important, and it doesn't grow with the economy. Predictability has been an issue because literally every year there's a host of tax cuts, so no one ahead of time can be sure of what the tax code is going to look like. Efficiency has been an issue because ideally what you do is you have a broad tax base, but you keep tax rates low. Instead, the general fund is based on only two sources, the sales tax and income tax, and sales tax rates are quite high. So, not in line with that. Jumping down to neutrality ties in with horizontal equity. As part of the tax cuts, part of them have been done by reducing the rate, so that the percentage income tax has been lowered, I think, 7 times in the last 25 years. But that's not the only way that we've lost revenue. We've lost revenue as well by passing tax credits, tax exemptions, and the like. And they lead to problems with neutrality, horizontal equity. Horizontal equity being that you and you might make exactly the same amount of money, but depending on what you choose or can do in terms of tax exemptions and credits, you'll end up paying a different amount of your taxes. Not the idea. And then number 9, vertical equity is a very different topic. What that means is that poor people tend to pay more, a higher percentage of their income in taxes than the affluent. The sales tax in particular is highly regressive. The income tax is progressive. In this state, we've been shifting the burden from the income tax to the sales tax, therefore adding regressivity. So what we've done is people at the lower end of the income strata are paying a higher percentage of their income than people at the high end of the income strata. Then finally, simplicity is also an issue in Arizona. Some of the tax code, it invites you sometime in your leisure to read about property taxes, for example. You won't understand it, I guarantee. It's very, very complex, the tax code. And we're talking about complexities now for people that are trying to pay the tax and also for the state to collect the money, which can cause inefficiencies for both parties. Such a complex tax code. I expect my time is up.
Thank you. So Tom's a tax expert. He probably loves to read property tax books, just for fun. A show of hands, how many of you can't wait to run out and buy a property tax book to read for fun? That's what I thought. So I want to add to Tom, because I'm not a tax expert. I don't find taxes and numbers especially thrilling. So why should you? How many of you were on streets to come here today? Everyone, right? How many of you wish that you didn't have to pay so much for your college tuition? Raise your hand. So you know that in Arizona, because of the tax issues that Tom brought up, that Maricopa Community Colleges and many other community colleges throughout the state have zero funding from our state legislature. Do you think that's how it should be? Or do you think it shouldn't be? Those are some of the decisions that are very important to these discussions. Do you think that it's fair or not fair that we base a lot of our revenues for our government systems here in Arizona on sales tax? Which means, as Tom just said, that the poorer you are, the greater percentage of your income goes towards taxes. Do you think that's okay or not? This stuff that may seem like a dry read is the most important and powerful thing that you can know about and weigh in on for everything else that you care about. Those streets that got you here today, those are not something that you budget for and build in a year. Streets and infrastructure take years to create. Building a college campus takes years to create. And much of that in Arizona and other places is usually funded by government revenue. So how do you think we should get the revenue? What do you think is fair and correct? What do you think works best for our system? What do you think? So when you look at these numbers, maybe if you look at them like me and initially go, oh, taxes, that was the one class in law school I did everything to avoid. Later I got a little more wisdom and realized, wow, that is the most powerful and important information you can learn if you are interested in public policy. Because you can have the best ideas in the world on how to change the world, but if you can't figure out how to fund it and how to fund it in a stable way, then you won't be able to have that impact. So that's what I want you to think about when you think about these finances and dry figures. And now that you've met Tom, you know who to call when you want the real information, right? And so now I'd like to introduce one of our partners in the Maricopa Community Colleges who works with us on this Future Leaders Town Hall. We have a lot of partners throughout the state. As an organization, we believe in collaboration and walking the talk of collaboration. So any event we hold, there are often a number of partners, a number of sponsors, and in this case, we've had a long-standing partnership in both starting the Future Leaders Town Hall and maintaining it with Maricopa Community Colleges. And our key partner and contact at this time for doing that is your next speaker, who will tell you a little bit more about this process and what's going to happen. So please welcome Brian Dille, who is Professor of Political Science here at Mesa Community College.
Thank you. I've been asked to speak for just a few minutes about the process that we're going to engage in a little bit here. So a little bit of background, why I'm a big fan of Arizona Town Hall. The Town Hall has been going on since the 1960s. It's a time where leaders, policymakers, civic, business, cultural leaders get together and ask these questions. What do we want for our state? How do we move forward? And one reason that I like the town hall so much is because it's not structured like a normal political debate where you have a pro-con and a side-con and they argue with each other for about an hour and a half, and that's what counts as civil discourse in our country these days. Instead, it's a collaborative conversation that tries to build up to consensus views. And that reaching across and trying to understand those views and draw from that a policy option that people can agree with really is a completely different conversation than just a debate. And that process enables the town hall to result in real, meaningful dialogue that produces actual policy. Now, eventually, colleges and universities started to send students to the town hall. And the quality of those voices were so good, they started to have the formal meetings that we're having now, which is the Future Leader Town Hall. And so you're coming together as students and future leaders to your recommendations, the recommendations that you arrive at, we're going to submit those in writing to the town hall organization. And those recommendations are then given to the actual town hall as sort of background briefing. And so your conclusion that you reach today can have an actual impact on implemented policy, which is a great opportunity that as citizens you want to have, because your recommendations will echo throughout the policy process for the next few years. And so I'm delighted that you decided to take part in that process and engage in this deliberative discussion. So please take this seriously, because you will be taken seriously with your recommendations. I want to emphasize that this is deliberation and not debate. We're going to be talking about money, which is always an emotionally fraught issue. I expect you to have strong opinions about that. You should have strong opinions, because most likely it's your money that the public is spending. So you should have an opinion. But we're not here to debate. We're here to discuss, deliberate, and eventually draw a consensus out of that discussion. So the way this is going to work is you will have a moderator at each table. The moderator will begin by give an opportunity for everyone to introduce themselves so you know who you are, and will then introduce a series of questions. As a group, you'll then discuss those questions. It is a structured conversation, and so I ask that you please not just blurt out and interrupt people, because that is more of a cafeteria conversation where the loudest, most obnoxious voice is the one that's heard. Instead, this is a structured deliberation, so you should only speak when the moderator has recognized you, that it is your turn to speak. I encourage you to participate, to represent what you know to this conversation. You each are bringing a particular background, a particular set of experiences to this conversation, and so you need to contribute those experiences and those insights to the conversation. Please do more than just keep your seat warm. We want everyone to participate in this conversation. Make sure you let the recorder know when you agree or disagree with something that's happened, because the recorder is trying to help the group arrive at its consensus view. And if you disagree with that view as it's developing, you need to let the group know so that you can continue to try to find a consensus view that you will agree with. So nod your head or say mm-hmm, or whatever you want to do, but acknowledge in some way that the points the recorder making are representative of what you want. If you are silent in a deliberative consensus view, silence is taken to be acceptance. And so please don't be silent if you're not accepting what's happening. In the conversation, again, this is not debate, so don't be trying to just score points and make sure everyone at the table knows how smart you are. That is not the purpose. The purpose is to find actual policy implications. And so try to look for recommendations. What policy can we do, and what can you personally do? There are multiple pathways where normal citizens can impact the policy process. There's elections and lobbying and court pathways and cultural change. There are many things that you can do as a citizen to influence these processes. And so feel free to bring some of those up while you're talking. Finally, one last point about what consensus means. Consensus does not mean unanimity. We do not have to completely agree on everything that is said in order to have consensus. What you do need to do is agree with what is being said. You may not agree with it 100%. There might be some things you wish was on there that isn't on there because the group could not come to an agreement. But that's okay. Think of like the founding fathers in the Constitutional Convention. Nobody really liked the document that came out of that because nobody got 100% of what they wanted. But they reached consensus, that they compromised, they found something that they could all agree upon, and that's what they went with, and left the opinions and views that were not agreed upon by everybody, they left that in their bag, so to speak. So that's what we're trying to do, reach a consensus, not unanimity, and that will happen through this deliberative process. And so I'm going to surrender the microphone one more time, and then once we begin, then please follow the directions that your moderator will have and begin the introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So I wanted to give you 2 more ways you can have an impact. You know that we will be listening to your discussion and that will be considered. But what we hope for is that just by participating in this, you will be inspired to become more engaged in your own community in whatever way that means to you. We hope it means to vote and to register to vote, especially in the primaries. Too late for this year, but that is the #1 way your vote can matter, is if you vote in the primaries, because most people don't. So we hope you consider that. But civic engagement is far more than just voting. It's doing anything in your community that really helps make it a community. And we hope that all of you will be inspired to do that and maybe have some more tools on how you can do that through this process. And if you are interested in participating as a student at the statewide town hall, it's 3.5 intense days, and the student participants for many of them is absolutely life-changing. I've heard that from them, I don't know how many times over. There are some colleges that fund students to attend, so you may want to ask your school or university if that's a possibility. All of the information is on our website. It's November 13th through the 16th, actually here in Mesa at the Hilton. So that is another way that you can become involved. And then finally, remember, use social media. You all are experts at that, and so we hope that's one way you can communicate your thoughts while you're doing this. And finally, thanks to our sponsors for this particular town hall.